Now then, guys, I'm at Gamescom. I got to play Harlowe for the first time, Borderlands 4 for the first time as well. So in the background is some like exclusive gameplay of the Vault Hunter that we've just not seen. But also I wanted to do something a little bit different because it's the same Vault that we've seen multiple times just with Harlowe playing it. I didn't want to just do normal gameplay. I wanted to show off not only all of the abilities and her like character like trait and stuff, but also all of the augments. The devs were really nice to basically allow me to reset the game to show all of the different augments and respec into them. But sorry that this video is out a little bit late. Sorry about the mic quality and if the editing's not great. Today's been a long day, but I'll talk about it as I go through the video. All of the attempts I've had to try and record this have been a bit long-winded, so I'll just try to skip into the main stuff. The first thing I wanted to start with really is going to be the character trait. Every Vault Hunter has basically something that makes them unique from each other, affects their playstyle, etc. And for Harlowe, it's no different. It's called Entanglement. Basically, whenever Harlowe uses her action skill on an enemy, those enemies become entangled. These enemies share a portion of gun damage and skill damage with all entangled enemies. So this is 7% of damage at base, and it's a 12-second duration, so it's quite long, but no doubt with the skill trees, which are going to be right at the end of the video, by the way, you can build into this a little bit more, and you can also build into some skills and augments that basically mean that you can activate Entangled that isn't just based off of the abilities themselves. In the background, you should see some gameplay of what the actual entanglement effect looks like. It's this like prismatic effect that's on an enemy. Pretty easy to see once you know what you're looking for. But like I said, there's some examples of activating this not off of your action skill. So some of these action skills are easier to activate entanglement than others. So we'll start with one ability that we've actually seen quite a lot of in Borderlands' lifestyle. It's the blue tree, seize the day is what it's called, and the ability is called 0 Point. It's basically Maya's phase grab. You grab an enemy with the Halo Accelerator to place an enemy in stasis for a duration. Enemies immune to stasis, i.e. like big bosses, will take damage instead. I did have an interview with the developers, and I specifically mentioned because people did on Reddit about like, is it good against bosses? And it's going to be in another video, but they essentially said you can build around it a little bit. So we kind of see that a little bit with the augments too. But you can also activate this ability again when you have an enemy in stasis to slam them onto the ground into other enemies, and also activate some other interactions based on the slams, as we're about to go through with the augments and the capstones. By the way, this game plays level 20, so it's not max level. We don't get to see any of the capstones, but I'll highlight them as I go along, I suppose, because they're obviously going to impact the way that these skill trees play. But this ability, you've sort of seen a bit in the background, will sort of show exactly how like the augments make it a little bit more exciting, but we've had good experience with it thus far. We also have Cosmic Brilliance, which is the green trait, and Flux Generator is the ability, where you throw down a Flux Generator, which is very similar to Zane's Shield, where you just throw it on the ground. It has this like AoE pulsing effect, which does cryo damage, 84 damage per second, and it also gives you overshield when you're stood in it. So you can see in the bottom left, like the extra shield that I'm getting from this. It's a pretty nice ability. I actually like using this ability more than I thought I was, and like I'm about to highlight, some of the augments themselves give some pretty cool interactions as you're playing along, which were really just fun to play around, which I guess is the main thing. Also with the Flux Generator, you can pick it up and move it. You can't grab it and hold onto it in the same way that you would do with a Zane Shield, or like with the turret for Rafa. You basically pick it up and just yeet it down onto a different space relatively close by to where it was. But there are some augments that allow you to teleport it a little bit further. You can also see the duration of it. It doesn't really impact it all that much, so you can keep moving it around. And there's a lot of really cool augmented interactions with moving it, but also moving inside and outside of the shield, which I'll go over very shortly. The cooldown is quite long on it, though. It's almost a minute, 22-second duration. If you can find ways to reduce it, it's strong. But yeah, like I said, Flux Generator is really cool. We'll highlight the augment in a second. But first, we're going to go over towards the Creative Bursts tree and the Chroma Accelerator, where you fire a big energy pocket. I'm just going to call it an energy blast because I keep tripping up on saying it fully. Where the blast passes through enemies and deals cryo damage to all it passes through. It basically doesn't explode unless it hits a wall, I don't think. But you can see the fuse on it. When it reaches the end, it will do a big radiation explosion. But you can activate it early by pressing the action skill again. Although there is a little bit of a window between using the ability and then re-triggering it that you can't do it, like 1 or 2 seconds about that. And it's quite a lot of damage, and the cooldown isn't too bad on it either. Unfortunately, I don't have much gameplay of the Chroma Accelerator. I'll explain it, like I said, as I go through the video, but essentially I was meant to be in the playtest at 9:30 this morning to record gameplay. Partway through, they were like, unfortunately, we can't get gameplay for you. Sorry. But I was like, can I come back later? And they were like, sure. So I was able to play through this whole skill tree, but I wasn't able to get much gameplay for it. However, I know that a lot of people are going to be able to show this off. IGN already have, so I wanted to focus on the other trees that I didn't think were going to get too much focus. And certainly Seize the Day seems to be the main one I think that people are going to gloss over. For example, if we go to Seize the Day, the first augment in the main branch is Strange Attractor. Whenever you shoot an enemy with a gun, bullets will ricochet off of that enemy onto any enemies that are in stasis, that are grabbed by the 0 point. If Harlowe critically hits an enemy, the enemy becomes entangled. So the wording on this, I don't know if it's like if you have to critically hit an enemy whilst stasis is activated for them to be entangled, but you're seeing some gameplay of me actually able to get this to work. By the way, the AI is really clever. It seems to know that I need to shoot them, and so they're hiding. But you do get to see a clear example of what the entangled effect looks like. But also that with a Jacob's weapon, you have all these ricochets happening. You could see how well that synergizes, right? Like I said, I don't know if this is like a while stasis is active, or whether it's anytime that you get a critical hit, you activate Entangled on an enemy, which seems really strong, especially for an augment this early on. This feels like one that people are naturally going to gravitate to. Excuse the pun. But yeah, I really like this augment. And there was not that many augments in this tree that I liked all that much, or at least I could show off as well as this one. But this one, really strong, really nice that it's available this early. The other augment is Peer Review, which is a little bit more support-centric, where when you get an enemy in stasis, it spawns a homing, rejuvenating projectile that hits either Harlowe or her allies once the enemy is either slammed on the ground, which you can do multiple times, by the way. I couldn't get gameplay of this because, again, I did it earlier today, and then they said no gameplay was available, but you can slam them multiple times on the ground. It can be a little bit glitchy as well by just sort of throwing them further up into the air, like you see in a lot of the gameplay behind me. But it's either if you slam them on the ground, you kill them, or the stasis ends. That's when these projectiles start to fly around, which basically decreases how fast your duration runs out for abilities, which is important to highlight for a lot of these other capstones and augments, but also increases how quickly these abilities come off of cooldown again afterwards. If the target is in fight for your life, i.e. you or an ally, they immediately gain second wind as if they've killed an enemy, which I think I showed in some of the gameplay, but this one was kind of hard to get gameplay for. And yeah, it's not too sexy, it's not too exciting, but obviously very strong. As you can sort of see with some of the gameplay, I was kind of getting my ass handed to me, and this skill tree in comparison to the other ones felt a little bit squishier. Also, the actual skill, like talents that I put in aren't the best. I essentially just built to reduce the cooldown of the action skills to show off it as much as possible, right? So I could have built things a lot better. So if I look bad, it's because I am, but I was building to just show off the abilities more than actually get through the vault alive. Wildcard Destabilization is the augment on the left-hand side, where entangled enemies take bonus radiation damage from Entangle. Whenever Harlowe deals radiation gun damage to an enemy, it restores action skill duration. Whenever Harlowe kills an enemy in stasis, creates a radiation nova. I don't know if it's a case of entangled enemies take bonus radiation damage from like stasis, but yeah, basically it increases how much you can do with radiation, which felt pretty good to work with the radiation gun that I had, but I think you have to build around it a lot more, either with other talents or like guns, mods, essentially just stuff in your kit to synergize with it a little bit better. But also the radiation nova deals damage based on remaining action skill duration. So you basically want to have your action duration just up consistently, which is kind of hard in a lot of cases. This one, I don't know if I got good gameplay showing it necessarily. It was a little bit hard to show off just how strong it is with just me, the build, the items that I had. But I think at max level, this kind of stuff is going to be really strong. This whole skill tree could be summed up as that. I don't think it's going to be very good for leveling, much like Amara had a lot of skill trees that like, this doesn't feel amazing. But once you actually start building around it and really focusing on the gameplay loop, I suppose, it might be the best for endgame, frankly. Who knows, though? The capstone, like I said, because this is level 20, we don't get to see the capstones in play. I still wanted to highlight them because they do synergize well with the augments in their respective branches. Fallen Bodies, where if you press F again, you can place an additional enemy in stasis at the cost for action skill duration. When stasis ends, automatically slams all enemies straight down. Again, this augment that slows down how quickly the duration runs out obviously counteracts the effect of something like Fallen Bodies. So there is probably some really cool stuff. And there's no cap on how many people that you can grab from the looks of it. So if you can basically make your ability of the 0 point run out as slow as possible, you can grab probably a lot of people and slam them down, which would be cool to show, but unfortunately unable to at the moment. Cold Storage is the middle augment where all damage dealt to enemies in stasis is stored. Whenever an enemy is slammed or the stasis ends, it creates a cryo explosion based on all stored damage centered on that enemy, and also automatically freezes other nearby enemies. This was hard to show off, again, just from the gameplay itself. It does feel, again, if you build around this a little bit more in a dedicated fashion, it's going to be really strong. But if it looks kind of milk toast in the gameplay, I wouldn't worry about it too much. It was also just hard to show. I don't know if we really got a good glimpse of the cryo effect coming through. But if you've got good weapons to work off, this feels really good. And again, it coincides really nicely to the capstone, where when Harlowe slams an enemy, it creates a singularity on an enemy followed by a big cryo explosion. So this whole tree is a little bit more focused on the cryo side, but also just pulling people in and fighting them. The final one in this branch is Inertia. Whenever basically you get a kill with an enemy on stasis, a new enemy is automatically added to the stasis itself. We've seen this before with Amara. When you get a kill, it moves on somebody else. It's also worth highlighting that there is a range on the grab as well with 0 point. And if you're out of range, you'll just click, you'll miss, and it'll go on like a 4-second cooldown. But it will go for the nearest enemy to you as opposed to who you're looking at, I think. It was a little bit clunky, I think, but I don't know if that's just me misunderstanding it and me, again, being on 3 hours of sleep. But the capstone is ground state, where every time Harlowe slams an enemy, it basically increases the slam damage and the radius of the slam damage, but the enemies in the stasis itself take decreased damage. So this is really good to just use them as a big bombarding whack-a-mole, and you can slam all enemies in stasis straight down. So you might be able to grab multiple people with this as well if you keep hitting them with the slam, maybe off entangled and stuff. Hard to really know. But yeah, some cool stuff. This skill tree was the hardest one to play. It sort of reminded me of the blue tree for Rafa, where it's like on the face of it, it doesn't look great. But once you actually get into more of the end game elements or just a higher level in level 20, it's really going to come into its own, is what I think. But I think this whole like thing for Harlowe felt like you feel amazing when your ability action skill is in use or available. But if you're struggling and you're waiting for your phase grasp to come back online, it sucked. I was getting the shit kicked out of me in this playtest, which was fun because it was a challenge. It was nice to see Borderlands 4 like really put me through my paces. But that's everything from the Seize the Day tree, the blue one. Now we move over towards the green tree, Cosmic Brilliance, which is the one with the flux generator, the big AoE shield pulsing thing. The first augment is coronal mass ejection, where enemies inside the flux generator lose all elemental resistances, and Harlowe and her allies also basically get increased status effect chance. There's a lot of stuff in this skill tree actually based around allies, even one of the capstones, which is kind of weird. So this seems to be the more like team focused one, but I don't know by how much. But a lot of the augments in this skill tree aren't visually that noticeable, so I didn't get much gameplay of like the specifics of it. But here it's just a case of they're more susceptible to being hit by elemental effects. You can do increased elemental like chance. Naturally very strong, just not that sexy to look at or really watch. This augment, however, was very fun. This is Blue Giant, where when you basically get increased radius on the flux generator, but also, like I said earlier, when you can move and re-trigger the flux generator by moving it around, in this case, whenever you re-trigger it, it either creates a cryo hazard where it used to be, or creates a radiation hazard based on where you're putting it. It does say and as if it does both, but it then says only one of these hazards may be active at a time. I'm not quite sure what defines which one's in effect. It might be just like if you throw it at an enemy, it's going to prioritize doing the radiation hazard. But if you throw it in a space where there isn't an opponent, an enemy, but there was an enemy where it was, it's going to do cryo effect. I tried showing gameplay of like both elements, assuming that it was both up until like I saw a little bit later that it wasn't. But yeah, like this one felt really cool to use, and it felt more than just a shield. It didn't feel clunky to use. It felt very intuitive, and honestly, like I said earlier, a lot more fun than I was expecting it to. And it's quite easy and early to get. So I think Blue Giant's going to see a lot of play. I really liked using this one. And yeah, it's cool to see you build around the elements a little bit more. You got Unified Theory as well on the augment on the left-hand side, where you gain increased action skill damage, and the effect is increased based on how many allies or enemies, and enemies are inside the flux generator. 10% for each without it stacking. So in stuff like the Vault, like I don't know if I got much gameplay showing it again. It's hard to visually see, so it wasn't really that easy to get gameplay of specifically, and I was just trying to get as much as possible. You can easily understand that this is very strong, especially when you're doing cryo damage and you're building around that a little bit more. It's just action skill damage that is pulsing out based on how many people are in there. So for mobbing sections like this, mobbing is obviously a thing that Harlowe seems to be really good at. It seems to be a perfect fit. The Capstone also has some really cool effects too, where now it's a charge skill. Whenever Harlowe relocates a flux generator, it teleports to a location in your crosshair, i.e. moving further, kind of like you can do with Vicious and Vex, where you teleport them onto a point where they turn into a badass. But it creates a shock burst that deals shock damage naturally to enemies inside it. If you use it on an ally, it instantly provides a 3-second wind and also heals enemies in the flux generator. So again, more like support centric, but you can use it further away. And I think if you put this with the augment where it might have the radiation hazard where you throw it, you get the radiation and the shock, which feels like a really cool synergy. There seems to be a lot of really like cool, quirky things that you can do in this tree, full stop, which is why I ended up really liking it. It's just a shame I couldn't get Capstone gameplay. Nuclear Winter is the augment. Whenever Harlowe and her allies are inside the flux generator radius, they deal bonus cryo damage. Whenever Harlowe and her allies leave it and they're outside of it, they deal bonus radiation damage for a duration. And whenever Harlowe inflicts cryo or radiation to an enemy, they become entangled. So again, being able to activate this the trait to do shared damage outside of the action skill itself. Amara had stuff like this where a portion of your gun damage would be elements, and I know Zane had stuff that was similar to this in the end, where it does just say bonus cryo damage, bonus radiation damage, but not whether it's onto your gun. And it is 25% of damage dealt, so it could double dip. On this subject, I did talk to the devs in the interview about double dipping, and they kind of alluded to the fact that it's not a thing anymore, but hold on to that. I don't want to sort of misspread any information before Lazy Data starts screaming and yelling into the void about it. But I spoke to them about double dipping and the whole idea of like some talents just being too strong because they essentially compound with the damage that they do. The devs said, yeah, that's not as much of an issue this time. Like, we're aware of it. But anyway, moving over to the Capstone Violent Horizon, your flux generator occasionally shoots out radiation projectiles at enemies outside of it. And it also, if it irradiates enemies, it will pull them into the radius of the flux generator. You can also, when you re-trigger it, it's going to create a singularity that pulls in nearby enemies and increases the action skill power, which I wish I could show this off a little bit more. Just the ragdolling was already pretty fun with the 0 point and smashing people about. This seems really cool. Naturally seems really strong. A lot of really exciting stuff here, I think, for Harlowe. And I also did get some gameplay of Nuclear Winter. I did misunderstand it. I thought it was if you stand outside of the generator, the pulse does radiation damage instead of cryo. So that's why I'm doing a bit of a hokey-cokey side of it. But yeah, overall, that felt like a really cool augment, and the Capstone seems to really synergize with it nicely. But the final one to go over is Perpetual Engine. When Harlowe activates a flux generator, she gains damage reduction and increased action skill duration for each entangled enemy, and each additional enemy she entangles whilst the action skill is active. But a capstone is really weird. Group study is what it's called, and instead of throwing down a flux generator, Harlowe spawns Halo sidekicks for each of the allies with her, and basically these fly around your allies and including you, I assume, giving you increased gun damage, fire rate, and reload speed. You can activate this ability again to increase the effect further on, but it does burn down the duration faster as a result. It's weird. We haven't seen that many capstones, any augments really that are based around like team play all that much. So a capstone specifically being focused on that, maybe it's still quite strong in solo play for Harlowe. It depends whether it impacts her or not. I'd assume so. But yeah, I wonder what you guys think of this one in particular, because I'm not too sure. I would like to try it out and see for myself, but just on the face of it, because we all love hyperbole and getting stressed about stuff that is out of our control or we don't know anything about. Moving over towards the creative bursts tree with the Chrono Accelerator Blast attack. Like I said, I wasn't able to get augment gameplay of this, but I have tried out all of the augments. There was also a pre-build for Harlowe that was on this tree. So I was forced to basically build around these augments. So I tried them out and then found out that the gameplay wasn't able to be recorded. So not much gameplay to show off on these, but I have used all of them. So I can talk about my experience. Starting off with Void Start, whenever Harlowe's unstable energy pocket, which I'm just going to call the Energy Blast, passes through an enemy, the enemy loses a portion of its current total health and becomes frozen. So again, that's total health, not current health. So, if it basically could act as an execute or at the very least an insta freeze, which is really good for any elemental builds, and just anything that insta freezes is always strong and really nice to have this available quite early on. Very strong, I think, for an augment this early on in a tree. Neuron Capture is the other augment that's next to it, where all damage Harlowe's blast does is basically stored. Very similar to Amara, I think she had something similar. Whenever it explodes, a portion of that stored damage is transferred to Harlowe's gun, causing increased bonus radiation damage, which is really cool. I loved using this one. I thought it was like, all right, yeah, this is just kind of very similar to Amara's one, where phase cast, the more it hits people, the more damage it ends up doing. But then it goes into your gun. That feels really cool. And again, with some of the capstones that we're about to see, it's just, I'm really surprised at how much I'm looking forward to Harlowe in particular. And this tree, despite not being able to show it off that much, is one that I'm definitely really interested to get hands-on with more. Field Research is the augment on the left-hand side. We're getting towards the end, guys. Thanks for watching again. Sorry if this video is a little bit long. Whenever Harlowe kills an enemy with the Energy Blast, or she kills an entangled enemy whilst the blast is active, you refund a portion of your next action skill cooldown. And it's pretty high, 20% per enemy killed. Those stacks on it, so if you manage to kill 5 enemies, then yeah, you're going to have this pretty quickly. The capstone is Cue Ball, where the energy blast bounces as it travels. You can't manually detonate it yourself, and each time it bounces, it creates a radiation explosion. Whenever it strikes an enemy, it changes direction and bounces towards another enemy. This one probably is a lot of fun. Kind of reminds me again of like Amara's 4th action skill that she got with the anniversary update, without it feeling horrendously clunky with punching it and pulling it. The fact that it bounces around, if you get good with this, it's going to be really strong. At the very least, it's going to be very funny. Special Purpose Magnets is the middle augment, where the unstable energy blast pulls enemies as it passes by, and its detonation deals increased damage for every enemy it has already hit. So again, very similar to Phase Cast, but just has a little bit more interaction, I suppose. This felt really cool and really rewarding when you can get it to work. And yeah, like I said, it just feels like if you enjoyed Amara but didn't like some of the clunky elements of it, a lot of these abilities in these skill trees just seem to build off of what Amara and Sirens have had in the past, which is weird considering she's not the Siren character. But regardless, we'll move on to the other capstone, which is Demon Core. As Harlowe's unstable energy blast travels, it shoots radiation darts at enemies, and whenever Harlowe entangles an enemy whilst the action skill is active, it automatically irradiates that enemy. Again, just instant success chance on a status effect, always really strong. I wonder what the darts are going to look like. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The good thing is as well, like with me not showing off gameplay of the red tree, is I imagine either other content creators are going to show this because it was the pre-built one, or it's going to be a lot in the like meet Harlowe gameplay trailers that Borderlands are putting out themselves. Again, one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on the other trees, and unfortunately ran out of time before I could get onto this one. Containment Breach is the augment here. Whenever Harlow's energy blast detonates, it splits into several smaller sections, doing unstable energy pockets. You get the point. It's similar, we've seen it before in other Vault Hunters. The Shattering Light is the final Capstone highlight. My brain doesn't comprehend this one because it's on a lack of sleep, but it's a charge skill instead of the duration, where you gain charges. You basically keep it readied for its duration of the Chrono Accelerator. Where you hold F, you end the Shattering Light early, and it's basically a fast-moving like energy like blast when you consume a charge. This is one that like it doesn't read well, but it's probably very easy to know what you're looking at when we see gameplay of it. But currently, I can't get my head around it. I obviously don't have gameplay because it's a capstone. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to go over in this video. Again, sorry it's a little bit long. Sorry that the audio is not the best quality. That's the problem with just traveling away to do playtests and stuff like this. But thank you very much for watching. I'll put the skill tree at the end, just going through it. I'm not going to read through every single talent because that would just hurt my brain, in all honesty. It's been a tricky trip, I'll be honest. A lot of personal stuff's happening at the moment. The fact that the playtest kind of was a disaster this morning was a shame, but everybody at Gearbox and 2K was super nice, and yours truly that helped set up the booth too. It made me really excited for like Borderlands 4 in the future and being able to get out and see people, which, you know, a lot of personal stuff's happening with me that I'm not really excited for the future all that much. So Borderlands 4 is coming at the perfect time to keep me distracted. So again, if you want to give any support, if you've enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe. I can't wait to get more involved, and thanks again for watching. I'm just rambling at this point because I'm tired, but good night. Here's the skill tree. I'll see you very soon with the dev interview and maybe some other bits and pieces. But thanks for watching. Bye.